Hello everyone, welcome to this video in the playlist of 10 key topics looking at securing a grade C in our Edexcel GCSE this summer, and this video is focused on scatter graphs. So a grade D kind of moving into grade C topic, you're going to find it at the beginning of one of the papers, usually question 1, question 2. So let's have a look at a particular typical example so we can come up with some of the key skills you're going to need to be able to access this question. So let's have a look at this example. Then it says Lucy reads 8 books, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plots there. For each book she recorded the number of pages, and we've got that on the x-axis here, the number of pages that the book had, and the time she took to read it, which we have on the y-axis given in the units of hours. So these are all of those 8 books, how many pages they had and how many hours. And that in essence is what a scatter graph does. It plots 2 pieces of data in the single graph to show whether those 2 pieces of data have a relationship with each other, whether, for example in this one, the number of pages a book has affects the time it takes to read it. Now, first things first, that relationship between these 2 pieces of data we're talking about in a scatter graph is known as, and here's a maths keyword that you do need to know for your GCSE, correlation. So correlation is the maths word for relationship between 2 pieces of data, and there's 3 types of correlation that you're going to need to know for your GCSE, and they look very similar to this. If the data is travelling in this direction, so from bottom left to top right, whether it's kind of really tight, strong data or whether it's kind of quite loose spread out data, weak data, this is known as positive correlation. And that means that if you think logically about the plots and how they're made, when the data's low on one value, it's low on the other. When it's high on one value, it's high on the other. So the data, the 2 variables, travel in the same direction together. So as one increases, so does the other. As one decreases, so does the other. The second type you can get is opposite to that, and it's seen in diagrammatic form with the points travelling this way, so from high on the left to low on the right, and this is known as negative correlation. And what that means is the opposite to positive. As one is high, the other is low, and then as that one lowers, the other one higher. So as one goes up, the other comes down. They have the opposite effect on each other. The final one is no pattern at all, so the points are just randomly plotted all over the place, and this is known as no correlation, i.e. they do not have an effect on each other. So let's just have a think about an example for each of those so you can better understand the concept. Positive correlation might be temperature and ice cream sales. So as the temperature increases, so does the sale of ice creams. Negative correlation might be, kind of, if we use the same similar example, temperature and coat sales. As the temperature increases, the sales of coats go down. No correlation might be, for example, your hair colour and the number of pets that you own. So they tend not to really have an effect on each other. So that's what scatter graphs are. It's the data that they show and it's how that they show it. And then let's have a look at the typical types of question you'd get about one in the exam. So we've talked about the information we've got here. It's about Lucy reading the 8 books and how long they took her. And then the first question says, describe the relationship between the number of pages in the book and Lucy takes to read it. You've got 2 choices with this question. You can either, number 1, and you're not going to put both, so I'm just showing you both, but you'd need to pick the sort of answer you put in your exam. Number 1, you could just say, really simply, positive correlation. And the examiner would know that you understand the concept of positive correlation and the type of relationship 2 variables have when they exhibit that type of standard. Just to say, if you do that, make sure you put the word correlation. If you just left it as positive, you wouldn't get the mark in the exam at all. The second type of alternative answer you could put here, because it asks about the relationship, you could actually talk about it logically. You could say how this is having an effect on this. Just make sure you get them the right way around. Say this one affects this one. So you could say something like, the more pages, the longer the time to read it. Because that in effect is the relationship between the 2 variables, which is number of pages and length of time. Okay, just a word of warning here, this question has said describe the relationship, so either of these are perfectly acceptable answers. Don't put both, just put one. If the question had said describe the correlation, then it wouldn't be acceptable to put this. You would have to use the key term positive. So just read the question really carefully and see what they say. Part B then says Lucy reads a further book, so we've got a 9th one now, and it has 150 pages. Estimate the time it takes Lucy to read it. Now, this is a 2-mark question, and that 2-mark question is a really big hint to you to say it's not just acceptable to get the answer right. You've got to do something to show the examiner how you got it. If you just wrote the answer, even if it was correct, you would only get 1 mark on this question. What you have to do, even though it's not said anywhere in the question, is you have to create what's known as a line of best fit. And for your GCSE maths, that line of best fit has to be linear. It has to be straight line. It can't curve like it can in science. So you are trying to, using human judgment, create one single straight line that represents the pattern of the points. And it might be slightly different each time you draw it. It might be slightly different to the person next to you in the exam. Not that you'd know because you're not going to look. But they are all perfectly acceptable provided they represent the pattern of the points. So that's our first mark. Our second mark then comes from using the line of best fit to make an estimate, and that's the key word here because there's no exact answer here. You're going to be able to put something and the next person's going to be able to put something, and there'll be a range of values that will be acceptable in the exam. Estimate the time taken. So we go to 150, so let's go back up to our graph now. We go to 150, which is there. Really neatly using mathematical equipment, I'm going to draw up to my line of best fit. Wherever I hit, I'm saying that's where the pattern flows, so I'm going to draw across. And then I'm going to try and read this value here. And I would say that value is something like 7.5 hours, something like that. So I'd go back down to my answer box and I would put in 7.5. On the mark scheme that the examiner will use, they'll have a range of values. So this one, for example, might be, I don't know, 7.2 to 7.8, something like that. And provided you're within the range of values, you'll get the mark, even if you're slightly different to someone else when you come out the exam and you talk it through. So just a word of warning, scatter graphs always require a line of best fit. The line of best fit then helps you to understand and shape the relationship that the two variables have, which are known as positive, negative, or no correlation.